Afternoon, everybody. This is the Burnaby South Debate 2, and this is highlights from Laura Lynn TT. So, again, biased, right? You should hear, and we will hear, the crowd reaction to her, and you should hear the crowd react to Jagmeet Singh as well. We're going to hear him denounce anybody who believes differently than he does. He says, for shame, I don't take any pleasure in saying that I'm disgusted by the things or the values being espoused that I've just heard. That's what he says. And we'll hear that. He's hard to understand, so I'll put up what he says. I've got it here for you. So, but first we'll hear Laura Lynn TT and hear the crowd, and then hear Jagmeet denounce everything she's just said as being terrible. And all you people who clapped, you're terrible too. You're terrible, awful people. You should be ashamed of yourselves.
It's very clear that Canada loves diversity and we love people. I believe as a Christian that we are to open our houses and our country to foreigners. That is not the issue. The issue is we do need to know who they are. We do need to understand that there are some people who could enter our country who might not share our values. Case in point, Marissa Shen. She's a 13-year-old girl that was murdered right here in Burnaby South in Central Park. I grew up when I was 14, I spent hundreds of hours with my friends. We goofed off a lot, and we spent a lot of time in that park. That precious girl her life was taken from her by a refugee. Not all refugees would do such a heinous act, but surely we need to know who is coming into our country. When you are letting 40 to 50,000 people illegally jumping the borders, how do we know who that is? Would we let those same people into our home to sleep on our couches right next to the bedrooms of our children? We need to be safe.
Pretty good reaction, in my opinion.
I don't take any pleasure in saying this, so I don't want any pause for saying this. But I'm disgusted by some of the values being espoused on this that I've just heard. It's disgusting to hear that. Now, we're talking about refugees. We're talking about people who are fleeing danger. These are people fleeing death. These are people fleeing serious situations. We need to have a caring heart and caring mind when it comes to people that are fleeing such dangerous situations. And of course we should welcome our hearts and our minds to people coming in, but we can't allow divisive rhetoric to purposely pit one against another. People are clapping when people say we need to turn away illegals. I didn't hear anyone clap when we talked about how our country is built on immigration. Our country is built on immigration. We should celebrate that. We don't need divisive politics that are pretending to be together.
Stay legal.
That does not sound like the reaction of a crowd to somebody who is going to soundly win the election. To me, the booing didn't happen with Laura Lynn TT. She didn't offend anybody. She just had not everybody clapping. But yeah, Jagmeet had a very active boo. So, and most of the interactions are like that. The rest of the highlighted ones in this 5-6 minute video are all Laura Lynn TT. Okay, so it's been a little while since I've done a Maxime Bernier Twitter roundup. So here's a Maxime Bernier Twitter roundup with a Ted Danson cameo. And I think this character on The Good Place would be hilarious. But first, and it's a short Maxime Bernier Twitter roundup because, well, there's only been a couple of major tweets in the last couple of days. So here we go. Maxime Bernier quote, 65,500 Canadians signed the petition that I sponsored asking the Canadian government to withdraw from the Global Compact for Migration. 10 days left to sign it. If you haven't done so already, keep the UN out of our immigration policies. And here's a link to the petition. And a link has been in my description since I learned of it, way back at 30,000 signatures. So that's kind of neat. It's going to be finished on the 21st. So that's next week. Pretty cool. Here is Maxime Bernier saying again, government-sponsored leftist logic. Big red X wearing clothes from another ethnic group. Big red X, white with dreadlocks. Big red X, blackface. Big red X, men building pipelines. Those all equal cultural appropriation, racism, and toxic masculinity. Big green checkmark, men wearing female dress and makeup. That's diversity. That equals diversity. And here is the tweet he's referring to, or he's responding to, and it's a Canada at Canada, and hashtag shout out to Toronto-born Brooke Lynn Heights, who will be the first Canadian to compete on the Emmy Award-winning show RuPaul's Drag Race. Canada is behind you as strut your way towards becoming one fierce superstar. And there's the Brooklyn Heights. Oh, Brooklyn Heights. Get it now? Ha, hilarious. And so, as expected, people are upset about the blackface. That's, I suppose, the worst of these, or maybe it doesn't belong in the list. I'm not sure. But here's the follow-up tweet from Maxime Bernier. It says, quote, "My staff tell me they got a bunch of calls and emails this morning from agitated journalists freaking out about non-existent phenomenon. Blackface is way more important than covering my policies on pipeline, equalization, corporate welfare, corruption, etc." Right? Ooh, blackface is a big story? Oh no! Ah, terrifying. Here's the thing. Maybe it was in the news recently, right? Are we not allowed to say blackface anymore? Is that something that's not allowed to be spoken about or not allowed to be used as an example in a tweet? Is it a banned word in leftist logic? Are we not allowed to talk about blackface? It is something that happened, right, Michael? I mean, Ted Danson? Maybe it was in the news. Here's CTV News reporting on February 10th, 2019. Blackface ran rampant in the 1980s culture. Maybe Mr. Bernier was reading that and thought, maybe the white dreadlock thing and the blackface are the same thing. Maybe, maybe not. I have no idea. But it seems interesting to me and interesting to Mr. Bernier that his phone was ringing off the hook for journalists asking about blackface, but not interested in covering his pipelines or equalization or corporate welfare or corruption. So that's the level of journalism, right? It's dog whistle politics at the level of the journalists. They are looking for clickbait because they want you to click, right? And they get paid, right? Maybe I'll use blackface in my title today. Are we not allowed to say that? Who knows? Ah! Right? Pretty scary. The last one, Maxime Bernier. So it looks like Mr. Morneau, our finance minister, who is on the Paradise Papers, the Panama Papers, has taken issue with Mr. Bernier's drag queen comparison as well, and has invited Mr. Bernier to see a drag show. Here's Bill Morneau's tweet, quote, "Canadians are proud of our artists, performers, and musicians. At Maxime Bernier, I invite you to join me in Toronto Centre's at Church Wellesley anytime to meet some immensely talented drag performers and see how diversity and inclusion strengthen our community." And Mr. Bernier responds, "Do you really believe I have a problem with drag performers, Minister? One of my 4 key values is freedom. Why don't you busy yourself eliminating the deficit as you promised and addressing crony capitalism in your government instead of inviting me to a drag show?" And he took the high road there, right? That's how you do it. Why don't you get back to your job instead of virtue signaling, Minister, right? And really, this is old school trying to drag somebody into the mud to say, I'm man enough to go to this drag show. Why don't you come to the drag show, right? And the idea is that they'll get a picture at the drag show and it'll be political hay for everybody, right? Everybody gets a nice photo op. But Bernier doesn't play the game. He says, no, Minister, go do your job because this is garbage. Because drag shows aren't something that politicians should be having a say on, right? Yeah. So, and up to the point of, should drag shows be happening in schools? No, absolutely not. If a drag show happens in a church in Wellesley, are any politicians in Canada going to have a problem with that? Probably not, right? And it looks like increasingly most of them would have not a problem with drag shows happening in schools from what I've seen in some libraries these days, which is pretty incredible. So I find it interesting that Bill Morneau tried to play it that way. I like how Maxime Bernier responded. And really, go check out the Burnaby South debate. The highlights, I didn't watch the whole thing. I should watch the whole thing, but I do have limited time. I apologize. But the crowd's response really, really encourages me. And yeah, so it's nice to see. Check out the People's Party of Canada.ca. Thanks for watching, everybody, and have a wonderful, wonderful evening.